little bit more than 1.5% of new cars sold in any given year recently in the UK is a Suzuki. And yet it seems to enjoy the brand awareness and the affection of a much bigger thing. Like anything Suzuki based that we do on the HJ website tends to be wildly popular, and at odds with the actuality of Suzuki being a fairly niche maker of small cars, really. It's largely because of stuff like the Jimny and the Ignis and the Vitara. Little cars that have endeared themselves to owners over generations by offering the virtues of utilitarianism, affordability, honesty, and a good dollop of quirk. But it's also because of the Swift, which has technically been around since the 80s, but it was really the one in the 90s that started to bring it a bit of love in the UK. And mostly because of the GTI model, which set the blueprint for affordable Swift-based driving lols. Plus, it was the cheapest way to get a set of proper racing seats at the time, probably. But it was the second generation of the Swift in 2005 that really endeared it to drivers here in the United Britain. The regular one was the very definition of cheap and cheerful, with an emphasis on the second quality. But the sport model in 2006 took the cheeriness to another plane entirely. It was brilliant to drive, not fast enough to be uninsurable for most young drivers, and it only cost 13 grand. Skip forward to this Swift Sport. Conveniently forgetting about the 2012 model because this whole exposition's already getting too convoluted. And the formula of cheap, cheery driving lols remains. Sort of. See, Suzuki's released this one with a bit of a monkey on its back. It costs £18,000. That's a 50% premium over a basic Swift. And more significantly, puts it on the outskirts of the field on which some very serious and very quick superminis play. There's the 200 horsepower and brilliant Fiesta ST starting at 19 grand, and the also roughly 200 horsepower Corsa VXR starting at about 20. Or there's the very high caliber Mini Cooper at about 17. Or at a stretch, the Volkswagen Up GTI, which you could easily argue does the same cheap thrill sort of job that the Swift Sport is supposed to do. What I'm saying is that in no longer having the market cornered in proper cheap thrills, the Swift Sport really has to be very accomplished. Quirky lols, no longer good enough. Thankfully, it is very accomplished. There's a lot of fun to be had here, but before we cut to me doing driving impressions and tell you exactly how that is, let's talk mechanicals. This Swift Sport is powered by a 1.4 litre booster jet engine, which unlike the Swift Sports of the past, has a turbocharger, hence the name. Much more torque and peaking much lower down the rev range. So not only does it feel much quicker than before, it's also a lot more economical, largely because you no longer have to wring the bejesus out of it to get the best from it. It's not actually that quick at all on paper, but the way it's set up means it feels relatively rapid. You get this surge of power off the line and in second gear particularly. The result being that when you're doing normal stuff, like coming off a quiet junction on a roundabout, say, this feels amusingly manic. And it's that quality, right, of injecting excitement into the everyday slow stuff. That's what makes the Swift Sport so endearing. I love cheap thrills. Into the corner, second gear. You can get a tyre screeching dead easily, but it just does not stray off course. It's so much fun. The simplicity of it all helps too. No driving modes, no adaptable suspension, and no sport button even. Basically, the whole car's a sport button. That simplicity means that Suzuki's been able to set this up in a nice space between dynamic and comfortable. Now that's a difficult place to find because generally those qualities are mutually exclusive. There's a lot that can go wrong. You can make the ride too firm or the steering too heavy. You make the brakes difficult to modulate, and you can just make everything feel a bit artificial. But here, all of those things are on the correct side of day-to-day usability. So you've got a best of both worlds situation, someone that's fun to drive, but also isn't a pain in the arse when you just go to work. Which is because this, of course, is a car that most of the time will be taking you to Sports Direct or Woolworths or wherever. So let's break from the dynamic stuff for a while and go through why this is an appealing runabout. First of all, it's well equipped. DAB, leather steering wheel, proper sports seats, biggish alloys, LED DRLs, aircon and a touchy screen nav. Albeit one of the dumbest systems in any car. It's turn this shit up a notch. See, I would, cash me outside girl. Catch me outside, how about that? But it's surprisingly difficult with this stupid volume slider here. Anyways, it has stuff. Other thing it has is space. There's room for 4 tall humanoids in here, a split folding rear bench is standard, a A quite large boot, albeit one with a significant drop down to the floor, which could be a bit irritating. And because it has standard safety kit including tidiness alert, emergency auto braking and lane departure warning, it gets a 4-star Euro NCAP rating, which isn't brilliant, but it's 1 star better than the rating that the other Swifts get, which don't have that stuff. In short, it provides a very good, if not exceptional, day-to-day ownership experience. Which begs the question, why not just buy a 12 grand Swift instead? And probably less if the dealer has some sort of special on, which it probably does. It's because this is truly one of the most honest, laugh-a-minute, front-wheel drive, manual gearbox driving experiences you can have. The sort of car that you instantly feel connected to, you know? Because it doesn't feel like there's loads of layers between you and the road. Some cars have masses of electronic and mechanical wizardry to try and replicate that feeling, but this does it by just keeping things simple, and it really works. It darts around like Jockey Wilson.
Yes, first way.
Not perfect though, because it's set up as both A, a runabout, and B, a low to medium speed fun thing. It comes a little bit undone on the motorway. Engine's a bit unpleasant sounding and a bit too loud, and the soundproofing's quite poor, so you get a lot of outside noise, a lot of tyre noise especially, and quite a lot of wind noise. So at 70 miles per hour, it does feel like a small, noisy, slightly old school small car, when a lot of small cars these days are doing the high speed refinement thing a lot better. And because the ride is on the firm side, it's not too firm, but it does mean that when you hit an expansion joint, for example on the motorway, the whole car jolts upwards. But obviously, nobody's buying a Swift Sport to commute 200 miles a day. They're buying it for the door-to-door happy times. And on that basis, it's a winner. It's like 8/10 of a Honda Civic Type R for 6/10 of the price. And actually, despite me comparing it to 200 horsepower stuff before, you're more likely to be looking at this in the context of mid-level superminis, stuff like the Seat Ibiza FR or R-Line Volkswagen Polos. And while it might not have the quality or refinement, especially over long distances, that they do, it's just much more fun and much more interesting. It's not going to be a future classic, but it's definitely worth a drive. So, Swift Sport done.
I love cheap thrills.
Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and watch our other stuff, it's very good. More detailed review of this over at HonestJohn.co.uk, and we'll see you next week. Bye!